Now, remember 2022 and the agitation in the People's Democratic Party for a presidential candidate of Igbo extraction. The argument then was that having given the PDP so many years of loyalty, it would be the height of unfairness and injustice if the ticket was denied the Southeast. There were threats from leading Igbo politicians that unless the PDP zoned the presidency to the Southeast, the calls for a return to the breakaway Republic of Biafra would become louder, and the Igbo political elite may join the radicals in demanding such a republic. Well, one of those Igbo politicians who threatened fire and brimstone unless the presidential ticket went to the Southeast was the former PDP chairman and former governor of Enugu State, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo. The PDP defied that threat and threw the ticket open, and as we all know, it ended up in the north. But Dr. Nwodo had made his point, and now he's at it again, this time stirring up more controversy by asserting that the Igbos built much of Nigeria, including Lagos, Kaduna, Kanu, and Port Harcourt, and in fact, many other non-Igbo states, and that if Nigeria has any hope of moving forward, it would have to give over. Take a listen.
Recently, the gentleman who was championing the Oduduwa Republic and was incarcerated in a neighboring country has been released and is free and is traveled abroad. Now, Nnamdi Kanu, who was also championing the creation of Biafra, has been kidnapped, incarcerated, even after the courts have said that he has no case to answer. The Igbo see it as further telling them that they are second-class citizens in their own country, and there is a different treatment for them as compared to others. If they allowed the Igbos to thrive and to influence others positively, rather than hounding them wherever they are, I think the country would have developed faster and better. Igbos created Lagos, Igbos created Abuja, Igbos created Kaduna, Kanu, most of the country, Port Harcourt. And when you have such people, it is the country to use, for the country to use them to the country's advantage and not to continue to suppress them.
Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo there speaking in an interview with Symphony TV. So is there merit in his assertion, or is he just stirring up more controversy and debate? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the man himself, the former governor of Enugu State and former chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo. Very honored to have you here.
Thanks very much, Charles.
And not a politician to be trifled with, given all those big titles. I mean, it's not easy to be the governor of a state as well as the chairman of one of the biggest parties in this country.
Thank you so much.
First of all, tell us the context in which this issue of how, of who built Lagos, Kaduna, Kanu, Port Harcourt, etc., arose. I mean, as we saw there, you were doing an interview with Symphony Television, and the issue came up.
Yeah, it just came. He asked me, "What is this position of the Igbos in Nigeria today?" And I tried to answer that question. Some people have quarreled with the word the Igbos created Lagos and so on and so forth. I think that was taking the thing out of context. What nobody can deny as a fact is that the Igbos have contributed immensely in the development of Lagos, Abuja, Kanu, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and many other cities. And I don't see why anybody should quarrel with that statement of fact.
Well, the fact is that people will wonder what evidence there is. Because, I mean,
I can give you.
You're a former governor.
Yeah.
I mean, what you say has a lot of weight. And so when you say that the Igbos built those cities, you mentioned it was taken out of context. When you say they built those cities, people say, what evidence is there to support that assertion? And did they build those cities to the exclusion of other ethnic groups, including those from the cities that you mentioned?
What I can tell you is, in any city that the Igbos have contributed greatly in building, they have come very close second to the indigenous population, and sometimes neck to neck. Let's take the two first cities that I mentioned. You know, in Lagos, if there are 10 markets in Lagos, 7 were built from swamp by Igbo traders. Not to talk about manufacturers in that city, not to talk about those who have built residential houses and those who have built hospitality industry. In this city, Abuja, this has been said by even former ministers of the Abuja Capital Territory, that about 70% of the hospitality industry in this city are owned by Igbos. And also about 70% of the plazas are owned by Igbos. Not to talk about houses that are up for rent.
So businesses in general.
Yes. So these are things that are common knowledge to anybody in this country. And I don't see why we should quarrel with that. Let me even ask those who are quarreling with these facts. How many cities in the Southeast have people outside the Southeast contributed in building? And the answer I have for them is that, well, you see, business goes where there's infrastructure. The seaport in Lagos is about the only seaport that's operating in Nigeria. And the Igbos do a lot of importation of goods. So they have to settle where the seaport is, build markets to sell whatever they have imported into the country. And then whatever they have manufactured, they can easily send them along the West African coast to other West African cities. The same thing here. You cannot compare the infrastructure that the federal government has built in Abuja to any other infrastructure in the Southeast. And people being entrepreneurs, they take advantage of it. And they come and they help to develop the place for their business. And I don't think anything is wrong with that. Every other person is free to do so. But it's just because these people are entrepreneurs. They take risks. And are ready to go away from home and face challenges. And whatever they meet there, they try to overcome.
Right. But there is a wider context to this, isn't there? And the wider context in which you were making that assertion was that in the face of, in spite of these considerable contributions and the fact that the Igbos are already a considerable economic asset to Nigeria, given that it would be logical to assume that they would also be a big political asset if they were to participate fully and equally in politics. Is that a fair summary?
It is a fair statement, but unfortunately, if we keep politics and business on the scale, the Igbos will go for business, and that will weigh more than those of them in politics. I tell you, for example, my friend and I, late Governor Ezife, when we had a candidate of Igbo extraction, we didn't mind what party we owed allegiance to. What was more important to us was to conscientize the Igbo population in Abuja to vote for their own. Why? If you have so much assets here and you don't have somebody in government who is sympathetic to you, You may have somebody who is exploitative to you. And therefore, to protect their interests, they should show interest in politics and vote their own kind to protect their investments. And in spite of our preaching from markets to markets, on the day of the election, the young boys were playing football on the main road. And many of them who registered to vote in the market were at home and couldn't go out to go and vote where they registered. So you have this laissez-faire attitude. The Igbos have come to think that, they can just survive without government, and they're not so much into government. Yes, they were more interested when they had these Azikiwes and the Emai Okparas than they are today. But I think what has happened in the interregnum has made the showing of Peter Obi to bring out that matter to the fore again. Because when the Igbos felt that they should have been given an opportunity by the major political parties to run for the presidency, and they were disappointed both in PDP and APT. And Peter suddenly came out from Labour Party. They went for him wherever they were. The fact that an Igbo was on the ballot, that was all that made the magic for Peter. And of course, there were two other factors. The youths rooted for him, and of course also the Muslim tickets did not help. So the Christians felt, okay, we have a Christian on the ticket. But you see, this has changed the political dynamics in this country, because it suddenly showed that when the Igbos are united and they have an interest wherever they resided, like in FCT, Abuja, like in Lagos, they made a dramatic showing for Peter.
Right, but there were quite a lot of senior Igbo politicians who didn't support him, and they were quite vocal and public in that lack of support. But let me stay with that interview that you gave, because you cited the issue of one man, Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the separatist group IPOB, whose continued incarceration you see as a clear example of the unfairness of the Nigerian system, because other separatist agitators from other ethnic groups have been freed, whilst Mr. Kanu, who is Igbo, remains in custody. That was one of your points, was it?
That's correct. Well, you see, why we are passionate about the release of Nnamdi Kanu is, one, he was tried to court, and the courts freed him. And we think that his continued incarceration is not fair. Number two, his continued incarceration has led to insecurity, massive insecurity in the Southeast. Because even apart from his supporters, a lot of criminals have caught in on it. And they terrorized the entire 5 Southeastern states, that you must sit at home on Monday, sometimes 3 days in a week. The amount of economic loss to the zone is gargantuous. And the loss of lives by these young people who threaten people to stay at home if you dare come out is also in their numbers. Not to talk about the injured and people who lose their property when the youths try to demonstrate their anger. So we believe that his release will bring a lot of succor to the insecurity in the Southeast. And let me even say, this government did not get a lot of votes from the Southeast. And there are things that a government in power can do to win the support of a people. If you see that the people are passionate, that if this man is released, there will be improved security in their place. And the feeling of marginalization and not being treated justly and fairly will have been, to a large extent, curtailed. So we don't, I mean, the president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is a die-in-the-wood politician. I am expecting that he will score a political point if he did it for the people of the Southeast. And we are hoping and believing that he will do so.
Right. Do you think, I mean, I'm sure you know that there was a lot of, I mean, that interview went viral, and there's been a lot of comment and reactions and so on to that. Do you think that when important, respected people like you speak about this sort of ethnic type issue, especially when what you say is seen to favor your ethnic group, I mean, never mind the accurate historical accuracy or not of it, when it is perceived to favor your ethnic group in a fiercely competitive environment that is clearly, or at least potentially, ethnically toxic. I mean, you should see the bile that is spewed on social media around sort of ethnicity. Do you think that what you say further deepens those divisions or helps to heal them?
It helps to heal. Now, let me tell you, Charles, as I said, when a government is in power, like today, it's an incontrovertible statement that Bola Tinubu is the president of Nigeria. We accept it. That is what the situation is. Now, if we feel something very passionately and we don't say it to him, we cannot believe him for not addressing it. That does not mean that we are ethnic. As a politician, my first constituency is Enugu State, then the Southeast, then Nigeria. But having said it, as the constituency increases, the greatest solution to my problem as a politician is that the country is seen to be fair, just, and equitable to all Nigerians,
right.
Not just the Igbos.
Right. So do you think the Igbos, well, you've sort of answered that question, but do you think the Igbos have been singularly and exclusively marginalized in Nigeria? Or is there a sense in this country that every ethnic group feels alienated from the political class who seem to have formed their own elite ethnic group? In other words, no one apart from politicians like yourself feel they have a real share in the Nigerian project and are likely to identify with their ethnic group first and as Nigerians second as a result of that issue of alienation. In other words, the politicians have created this situation.
It is natural. Charles, if somebody is denying you of your fundamental rights, you don't celebrate it. You fight it. So if we're in a Nigeria that is not fair to all concerned, I will make the same passionate argument for any other group that I feel that are receiving the tail end of the stick. For example, I think that the minorities in the North, in particular the Middle Belt, in the last eight years of the former administration, were so badly hurt for no other reason that some people wanted to take over their land and in the process slaughtered them. And the government never arrested one person and no person was punished. And every day we saw on television corpses lined up for mass burial. It was not fair. And I would say it as hard as I say it for the Igbos. It was bad. So the country must strive for unity. The country must strive for fairness to all of us to be happy, to be Nigerians.
And are you seeing any signs that the Tinubu government is moving towards trying to bring Nigerians together and to create this new sense of an all-inclusive identity that you talk about?
They are trying, but they have so much more to do. Because if you ask Nigerians, they will tell you that the headline is that he is favoring his own circle of the Southwest, Not even all of the Southwest. So if you go to the Southwest, some people are complaining and some people are celebrating.
But that's the problem with Nigeria, isn't it?
Yeah.
As somebody said, the moan factor. The moan factor goes through the roof. And everyone feels like they're not part of the Nigerian project.
We must continue to criticize fairly, admonish and advise our governments. And until people speak up like this, government will not address the issues that hurt the people most. We accept that there is a Tinubu government in Nigeria today. Our business is to support him. Our business is to critique him. Our business is to see him unite all of us to solve the problems of Nigeria, because no one person or tribe can solve it alone. So he must be certain. You know, some other parts of Nigeria have tried to engineer the Igbos to support them to fight the Tinubu administration. And we in Ohanese, we say no. We have a sitting president. We're not going to fight him. We're just going to make sure that we let him know our own problems and address them, and know the problems of Nigeria and address the problems of Nigeria.
You mentioned earlier that your primary constituency is Enugu State and the Southeast. Would it help if Nigerians were able to think first as Nigerians and second as Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Fulani, Ijaw, Efik, or whatever, Urobo? If so, how might this be achieved?
It will be achieved as long as we decide that we're our brother's keepers. And that if you are holding central power in Nigeria, you must be detribalized. If you are not detribalized, you cannot unite the country. Once you speak for your tribe alone, when you are holding central authority, you are dividing the country. So our leaders must be detribalized. Their leaders must not be sectional in their religious leanings or in any other form at all. That is the only way to reunite Nigeria. And Nigerians are not stupid. If they see somebody who is championing everybody's cause, they will follow the person sheepishly. Wherever you take them, they will follow you. But once they see that they're being left out, they will keep grumbling and grumbling. And let me also say that one of the solutions, apart from that the leader must be detribalized, is that we want a leader who will go for restructuring of Nigeria. Very, very important. Why? Because what we are operating now is hurting the economy so bad. We have a feeding bottle that is drying up in the form of crude oil, trying to feed 37 babies, 36 states and FCT, with milk that is drying up. But we would like at least 3 major centers of development where people are using the God-given natural resources in their place to fend for themselves. But they're not doing so. They're just waiting at the end of the month, federal government to bring money. And that has made a major difference in our economic fortunes. It was not like this in the First Republic when we had the zones.
But I mean, you talk about the Igbos and their entrepreneurship and so on. What is that happening in the Southeast? It didn't happen during your time as governor. Why isn't there more pressure on the politicians and, from the business class to say we've got to develop our region, never mind other regions. I mean, we need to diversify the economies in the Southeast and try and get them to earn money away from that feeding bottle that you're talking about.
Let me recall my friend again, Governor Ezife. He's the one who started preaching think home philosophy as governor in Anambra State. Now, the Ohanese is preaching think home. And we are beginning to realize that if the efforts we have made all over Nigeria and all over the world, that if we put 50% of that effort, we will create an economy as robust as Dubai in the Southeast. And let me say also, in Spain, the Barcelonians wanted to secede. But when they were refused,
Catalonians.
yes, when they refused,
right.
they went back and developed their place, and that is the economic capital of the place. We also give our people the example of California. California didn't want to go away from the United States, but they are about the 6th largest economy in the world, still inside the United States, and benefiting from the large country that they belong to. So we think that if our people can think home and develop home as they have tried to develop other places, we will create a robust economy, and instead of we going somewhere to sell our merchandise, people will come to our place.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposal. Let me ask you this, in the dying moments of this interview, are you still in the PDP, the People's Democratic Party?
I am.
Okay, I don't know if you, I hope I'm not going to spring a surprise on you, but there was a letter released today by Emeka Ihedioha, the former governor of Imo State, resigning from the People's Democratic Party. I don't know if you're aware of that. I wondered what your reaction might be to that, because, I mean, it sounds like a scathing indictment of the PDP, and his letter said as much for someone as prominent as Emeka Ihedioha, who's been loyal to the party all these years, to resign from the party.
You see, Emeka's resignation has been coming for some time. He has a major political challenger in the state, in the person of Senator Anyanwu, Sam Anyanwu. And Sam, as National Secretary, decided to contest for the governor of Imo State without resigning his office. Therefore, he became an umpire in a match he was involved in. And Emeka, seeing that he had no chance, dropped his ambition to run for the governor, because he didn't see how he would win a primary conducted by the National Secretary, who has all the instruments of the party. Now, the Southeast came up against this and said, by our constitution, having contested that election, our constitution deems that he has resigned, because he was supposed to resign by the dictates of the constitution. The party has not asked him to resign, in spite of the fact that the Southeast has produced a candidate to take over his position. So Emeka does not see his political future being realized as long as Sam is sitting on the chair of the secretary. Again, when he was there, we were able to win the governor of his state, and he believed he could have won it again for us. And if the party does not appreciate this and keeps him in a position that he will permanently lose for his ambition, that he had to look somewhere else. We regret his leaving, because he's a strong member of our party. He has won a state's governorship election on our ticket, and it will be difficult for us to find a replacement that will win that state for us.
Okay, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo, I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Come in here and spend time with us. Dr. Nwodo is the former governor of Enugu State and former chairman of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you very much indeed.
Charles, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.